I must issue a correction from my Crunchyroll video yesterday. I believe I said Crunchyroll took over Funimation, but that's not exactly what occurred. And I did correctly report this in my other segments about this news, in which there was probably about 5 over the last year, give or take. But yeah, basically Sony through Funimation acquired Crunchyroll, but it seems they want to bake everything or phase everything into the Crunchyroll brand, and hence why Funimation is being removed and, like I said, phased, rolled into Crunchyroll, however you want to put it. So that is the correction for my little mix-up yesterday, just wanted to clarify. And now moving on. Crunchyroll's low pay sparks controversy among VAs. VAs are taking to social media to demand that Sony and Crunchyroll offer better pay. Game Rant says many fans of anime have been waiting to see who would ultimately be the main platform used after Sony acquired Crunchyroll in a $1.2 billion deal. However, as it looks like Funimation will ultimately be moving its entire catalog over to the orange-clad streaming platform, voice actors are expressing outrage at how poorly the company has been paying them. Several VAs known for their work on major anime dubs have been taking to Twitter to complain about their pay rates, with some calling for more unionization efforts to ensure fair treatment. There have been claims that Crunchyroll is exploiting their voice talent, underpaying them while not providing any other benefit. I'm sure there are some people that would agree that Crunchyroll is exploiting voice actors. I would just like to point out, whether you agree or disagree on that notion, that over the years, Crunchyroll has also been accused of extremely low pay given to their translators. Add over that, taking a look overseas to Japan, and there are notorious things in this industry, the anime industry, so to speak, and also the manga industry, you could say, where mangakas and animators work, to even say tremendously long hours would be an understatement. They're freaking basically putting their entire life dedicated to their craft. Now, I don't know what the compensation necessarily is regarding the pay, but certainly that level of dedication to work could be seen as unhealthy. And in some cases, of course, it's not even necessarily dedication so much as what the job is requiring you, what the job is forcing you to do. I'm making that distinction, though, because in some cases, of course, with a more independent mangaka, it is their decision, but you could also argue that it's ultimately what they need to do in such a competitive environment to succeed. Ultimately, the point that I'm making here is, in this industry, it's not just the VAs that have an argument and a stake of potentially saying that they're being treated unfairly. This stuff goes back to translators and all the way back to Japan itself. Now, over on Twitter, some of these VAs are saying that they're getting paid extremely low wages at wages that are between $35 and $75 an hour, which in comparison to the pay that translators get, and once again, I don't know the pay that over in Japan people are making if you convert that from USD to yen, but you see the point I'm making here as well, hopefully. I don't really know how the VA complaints stack up to the other pre-existing issues in this industry. I'm not trying to take away from the VA complaints. I'm just trying to take a look at a broad spectrum of issues in this industry, so to speak. On the topic of Twitter, as you can see here, here's a recent tweet from Crunchyroll, to which there are people in the responses bringing up the arguments of low pay regarding VAs and also translators. On the other side of the coin, a response says they do get paid, they just don't make as much as Hollywood celebrities. Also, that will drive up the cost of subscriptions, which I'm okay with, but others have complained that it isn't free anymore. So let's go back to this voice actress's tweet herself, Sarah Sakura, the one I showed a moment ago, but let's actually read now. So she says, lots of people outside the VO industry are arguing that they believe $35 to $75 an hour to dub anime is an incredible rate. Here's a thread as to why that rate is incredible low in terms of voice acting. 1. Voice acting in a nutshell is freelancing, meaning voice actors do not work 9 to 5 hours, 5 times a week. The reality is that some actors might work once a week, or even less than that, and that's normal. 2. Anime companies, specifically Funimation/Crunchyroll, are owned by a major corporation like Sony. They easily have the funds to allow their actors to make a living wage, yet they are not hard pushed to do so because so many actors are willing to take lowball rates. I just have a question. I wonder if this person and the people agreeing with her were there when the news originally occurred that Sony was trying to acquire Crunchyroll. Because if I recall, the news came out and the deal didn't actually go through for like 6 months or maybe longer because there was like a Department of Justice probe to be sure it wasn't antitrust. And myself, as well as many anime fans, were speaking out about this, worried about this potentially being a monopoly. And I just can't help but look back at some of these individuals who I don't think talked about this going on at the time, and now suddenly people are taking umbrage with it when they see an opportunity to make more money. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's something worth at least noting, though. Moving on. Back to Sarah, she says, 3. Being a full-time voice actor often takes years to break into. It also requires expenses with classes, home studio equipment, and more. Again, side note here, I believe you can write that off on your taxes, though, as like business expenses. Continuing. A higher hourly rate is paying for a trained and skilled actor who honed their craft. It is not just reading in funny voices. 4. In most cases, voice actors do not make residuals in anime, meaning an actor gets their $35/$75 for the hour and it won't make another penny, even if that show becomes a mega hit that will be watched by millions. 5. If these projects are NU, and the bulk are, then voice actors are not able to redeem healthcare or pension benefits either. This takes away a lot of job security typical 9-to-5s may offer. Okay, but that particular issue is absolutely not exclusive to voice actors, not that Sarah is saying it is. I'm just pointing out that unless you're making a salary with a contract and everything, yeah, chances are you're not getting health benefits and things like that with your pay. To my understanding, at least, most contracted employees, so to speak, don't get those benefits. That's part of the trade-off, right? If you're not working a typical 9-to-5, well, you may be able to do your contracted work and look for other contracted work to also do in the meantime, and maybe even have a more regular job with that as well. Not a 9-to-5, but perhaps something part-time that's more stable. Or on the flip side, a lot of people don't like that approach, and that's why they decide to get a 9-to-5 job, right? They want the stability, they want the benefits that come with it. I can guarantee you, for example, that there are so many people working like office 9-to-5 jobs that they actually dislike, like they hate the work, but they still do it because they need those health benefits. 6. Anime dubbing is notoriously the lowest paying genre in voiceovers. Video games, prelay animation, commercials, and every other sector of voiceover pays more, considerably more. It's time for anime to get the much needed update to the rate to match the rest of the industry. Maybe that's true, it could be a fair point, but we'd have to then take a look at the amount of income those other industries are making in comparison to the anime industry. In which case, if the anime industry is substantially lower, you could argue, well, that's why the money isn't, being spent more on voice actors and stuff like that, because the money's just not there. Now, ultimately, when Sony's involved, does make me question that. Sony's a freaking rich company, right? But they're not making all that money off of anime. Sony is a company, is a massive corporation that's involved in so many sectors. It actually surprised me when I took a look at it. 7. Additionally, voicing in anime can also be physically damaging to vocal cords. DBZ is a good example of an anime that puts heavy strain on their talents' voices. Even more so, actors should be given healthcare eligibility when possibly damaging themselves while working. Well, anime voice acting is certainly not the only line of work where you might have a physically demanding job and potential medical issues that arise from that, and even medical issues where your employer or the person contracting you isn't going to help you at all with it. But even so, perhaps that is a fair point that she's making on that one. 8. Ultimately, if you love anime, then you should support voice actors that are just attempting to get mega corporations to pay fair rates. Learn more about voiceover rates at this link. 9. And a note, if anime does opt to go more toward union, I sincerely hope that productions will taft heartily openly so the NU talent of the world can still take part in this growing industry. 10. Additional points for consideration. Inflation in an economy that hasn't adapted dubbing rates since anime was a small new concept in West... Excuse me, wait, you should bring it... We're talking about inflation now? Let me restart on this one. Hold on. Inflation in an economy that hasn't adapted dubbing rates since anime was a small new concept in Western markets, taxes that reduce our net income even more. Let's fight for actionable change. Support the efforts of COD-A Unite. COD-A Unite. Okay. Yes. So inflation is hitting everybody, not just voice actors. And taxes, I can understand that complaint because I have to file an extra tax for self-employment, as anyone that's self-employed would have to, including, it looks like, voice actors. So we generally have our state tax, our federal tax, and this extra self-employment tax. Now, here's the thing. Anyone that's actually getting paid from a company, anyone who's on a company's payroll, is not having to pay that self-employment tax, but their wage is directly lowered because the company takes out a portion of their paycheck for Medi-Cal and Social Security, and they send that to the government on your behalf, directly from your paycheck. Now, if you're self-employed, the person contracting you, or however it works, is not going to directly take out of your paycheck Medi-Cal and Social Security. However, the government still says that you owe money for that thing, Medi-Cal and Social Security. So what they do is they turn around to you and say that you must file an extra self-employment tax, which basically equates to the same rate as the Medi-Cal and Social Security would have if you were working a job on someone's payroll. So that's how that all actually works. I'm not sure if Sarah is aware of that or not. And don't get me wrong, it does suck to have to file that extra tax. I mean, when tax season rolls around, it's like, oh dang man, gotta send it to the Fed, gotta send it to the state, gotta pay the self-employment thing as well, which is a pretty significant chunk. But again, you always gotta remind yourself, well, if I wasn't working this type of job, that would be taken out of my salary anyway, so ultimately her main tweet collecting over 6,900 likes. And I do believe this is one of the more viral ones, so to speak, regarding voice actors, talking about the pay that they get and directing some complaints to Crunchyroll / Sony. There was also this one from this Morgan person, 1,500 plus likes, saying there's literally no excuse to not pay dub actors the same rate across the board anymore. Okay, so what if the company turns around and says, you're right, we're going to go with $10 an hour across the board? Like, I'm kidding around, but you get the point on that one, I'm sure. I think Morgan wants everyone to earn like the highest pay possible or something. I mean, look, doesn't like, don't am I really having to explain this? Don't different voice actors do like different jobs? Like, aren't there some VAs that are better than others? Like, no one get offended at that, right? This is just something that's a fact. Some VAs are probably more experienced and better at the job than others are. Not to say that the ones that are not as good can't come up and increase their skill and whatnot, but like, perhaps that's part of the reason that some people get paid more than others. I don't know. Now, that said, I do also think there's a lot of really like scummy stuff that goes on in the VA industry, where someone in a position of power will just get their friends, their VA friends, to get roles over and over again. And there could be like an exceptionally talented VA that just never gets a chance because they don't know the right people. That sort of stuff definitely happens, especially with the Texas Funimation crew. I guess with Funimation being RIP now, I'm not necessarily sure how to phrase that anymore, but that was certainly a thing, at least from the things that I have seen. And so this person, Michael Schwalb, who I believe is another VA, retweets Morgan Leah and collects over 2,200 likes, saying, for those not in the know, Funimation has a long history of exploitative, tired pay for anime actors, starting at only $35 an hour without session minimums. With this merger, there is zero excuse to continue this shameful practice. Pay your actors. To this guy's credit, he would also point out some of the concerns with other areas of this industry. For example, he says, anime is exploitative from the top to the bottom. Animators, artists, actors, Japanese, English. Nobody makes what they should, given that anime is like a $25 billion business now, except executives. Although I will push back on what he says here, where he writes, oh, did I mention that unlike almost every other competitive acting job that pays you a 10 to 20% for your agent's commission, Funny doesn't, so you lose that pre-tax out of your already tiny paycheck. So the first thing, from what I've seen, most of those jobs do pay around 10%, not 20%. And some might say, well, 10, 20%, not a big deal. I think it is a big deal and worth pointing out because you go from 10 to 20, you're literally doubling that pay. Now, regarding being a voice actor and having an agent specifically, I don't believe voice actors actually need agents. And to be quite frank, a lot of actors shouldn't need agents either, in my opinion, but it's kind of an archaic system that they use. How this generally worked before the internet is you would have an agency that has talent on their roster. The agents would come into the building, to the office in the morning, and then they would get paperwork sent to them, faxed to them, sent to them. And basically what this paper would be, and sometimes it was just a gigantic sheet of paper, for example. Other times it was, smaller pieces of paper sent to various agents. Point is, the agents come into the agency, they come into the office in the morning, they take a look at these papers, and on the papers are casting calls, essentially, where studios that they are in contact with will send them over listings that they need for talent. So the agency would take a look at these job openings, so to speak, these casting openings, go through their roster of talent to find someone that's a good fit. They would send that person to the agency when they have like a casting call. They would audition for it, maybe get a call back, and hopefully ultimately book the job. Now, again, that's acting, not voice acting, although it would generally work similarly. So, yeah, okay. But now, with the internet, things work a little bit differently, especially if you're a voice actor. Because to my understanding, in VA work, you do not technically need an agent. You can find work without one. So if you're going to choose to use an agent, that agent's of course going to want to be paid. And I got to ask why the company that's looking to hire you should incur that cost. Maybe they should. Maybe someone can make a fair argument for that. That's just the question that I have. And then there was also this tweet from Stephanie Sheh, who I believe is the English dub of Hinata. She says, now that Funimation and Crunchyroll are merging, can we get some union dubs? And her tweet gets over 3,300 likes. Now, let me preface this by saying I'm no expert on unions. But the problems that I have with unions, for example, going back to the acting industry, you got something called the Screen Actors Guild. And from my experience in that line of work, which I'm not going to get into in this video, but as you could probably tell from the stuff I talked about, agencies and all that, I do know a little bit about how this stuff works for some reason that, again, I'm not going to get into. But anyways, with the Screen Actors Guild, for example, that actors generally have to sign up to, a lot of the people looking for work will be required by the Screen Actors Guild to only hire people that are signed to the Screen Actors Guild, or as they call it, SAG. And SAG itself really does nothing for you. Like, they don't help you get work. It's just that if you're not a part of the Screen Actors Guild, you're not a part of SAG, you're not going to be able to get these jobs. But again, let me emphasize that they don't help you find the jobs. They don't help you get the jobs. It just means if you're not in with them, that the production team or whatever won't be able to hire you. So the Screen Actors Guild essentially forces you to join them. They don't really offer you anything in return, and they do take a portion of your money if you do make money. Now, perhaps a hypothetical voice acting union would operate in a more efficient way, in a better way, in my opinion, if you want to put it like that, than the Screen Actors Guild does for actors. But I don't know if it would. Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't, maybe it'd be the same, maybe it would be worse. Another thing I don't like about unions are, to my understanding, it stops the individual's negotiating power. And that's something I personally like. I like so much that I don't even have managers representing me for anything that I do. I've had a bunch of people contacting me in my email, offering management services or to become a part of their multi-channel network and stuff like that. But ultimately, all that stuff is useless to me because if I'm going to get a sponsorship with the company, for example, I like talking to that company directly. I want to negotiate on my behalf. I want to see the contract myself. And if there's an issue with the contract, I'll point that out and I'll ask them to change it. And if they don't want to change it, well, maybe the deal won't go through. Point is, I prefer doing that all on my own. Why do I want a manager to do that for me when I think they're going to do a worse job and they're going to take my money on top of it? So the same thing kind of unfolds with the way a union works, right? A union is supposed to negotiate on my behalf. They get a portion of my pay or something like that. I'm not 100% sure how that all works, but clearly the union's got to make money, and it's probably going to come out of my pocket if I'm a part of the union. And it stops my negotiating power. Now, the other side of that argument is saying, well, if people band together, they have collectively more negotiating power. But I don't know if that's always the best approach. Like, why does my individual negotiations have to be baked in with everyone else's? What if, for example, someone's really like lazy and not putting in a lot of effort? I'm not able to negotiate on my behalf because I got to work with this dude. Stuff like that kind of turns me off of this whole union thing. But again, I'm not in the know 100% about how this all works. That's just my opinion. I'll give you another example real quick before we wrap this video up. An anecdote. When I was working at the restaurant, I asked to be moved up to a position after the current position that I was in for a while ended up becoming less and less pay. Don't want to get into details about it. That's besides the point. Point is, I asked for this better position and I did do good work. The managers liked me and everything. They wanted me to, be happy with the job. And they did ultimately say, yeah, we'll move you up. Thing is, they liked me so much on this other job, they didn't really have anyone to replace me. So they kind of gave me beating around the bush, so to speak, right? They're like, we'll move you up, sure. But then ultimately it really became, oh, here's one day of training, like a week. It's going to take a couple months for you to finish the training where you can move up to this new position. It became so annoying, and they were dragging me through the mud, so to speak, so much that I ultimately went in the morning, 7 a.m. before the restaurant opened up, and I came in on a day that I wasn't scheduled to work, and I had a piece of paper in my hand. So imagine you're the manager in that case, right? The restaurant's not open yet. You're the manager in the office, sitting down. Suddenly your door opens, and you take a look. The employee that walked into your office is one who is not scheduled for that day, is coming in before the restaurant's even open, and has a piece of paper in their hand. Clearly something is not right. And when you see that piece of paper and you know it's an employee who, has been asking you for something that you've kind of been screwing them over on for a couple months now, you probably know what it is. And that's exactly what it is. It's a 2 weeks notice. I typed it out in the morning. I went down there, brought it in the morning, and I said, I appreciate working for you guys. You've done a lot for me. It's been enjoyable working here, but I just got to move on. This is just not paying me enough. Here's my 2 weeks notice. You know what happened in that case? Manager said, please don't quit. We'll promote you tomorrow. We'll get you started on that training tomorrow. We'll finish you this week training, and you'll have the new position. And that's ultimately what happened. I got the new position, finished the training, all of that done within a week after I really stood up for myself. Now, if I was a part of a union, of course, it's a restaurant example, so it's not a perfect apples to apples comparison, but I think it still is worth pointing out. If I was a part of a union, something like that, I wouldn't have had any power to actually go in. Like, the union would probably be upset at me, and the manager would be like, look, I like you, but there's something I can do. You're a part of this union. You got to go through the union, and the union managers or whatever, the delegates, however you want to put it, they got to go talk to me about all this stuff. Sorry. So yeah, those are just some examples of the concerns I have regarding unions. I don't know how helpful they'd really be for voice actors and all that, but hey, thank you for tuning in. As always, let me know what you think in the comments. If you like the sort of stuff, I cover news in the anime industry and stuff going on in the community every single day, so consider subscribing and liking the video. That'd be much appreciated. And I'll see you in the next one.